So here we go for another talk. You know, there are actually a couple of days during the week I don't give a talk, but I'm pretty sure when I go to sleep I talk in my sleep. I'm so used to giving talks all over the place. And sometimes I wonder just how can you talk about something new when everything I say is put on the internet and people listen to it all the time. My only hope is that, and actually I always like this, talking to elderly people. Have you ever seen how many elderly people come to our centre because they can't remember what I said last week? So they come again. Thank goodness for dementia. But anyway, all these talks which I give on a Friday night here or somewhere else in some other country, I always try and make these great Buddhist teachings to adapt them to our modern life, the basic teachings of Buddhism, but see how they can be used to help solve some of the problems and difficulties of life, because I have those difficulties of life too. And always asked to do things and to give opinions on things. And you know, one of the lovely things about Buddhism, we were just talking earlier, we don't have hierarchies. Not really. When the Buddha, just before he passed away, because he was a boss at first, obviously, he started Buddhism, and was asked, when you die, when you pass on, who will take over the leadership of Buddhism? And just one little sentence just changed the whole direction of this thing we call Buddhism. He said, when I die, no one will take over. Just let the teachings, be the leader from here on in. So just that one little sentence, which everybody knows the Buddha actually said, it meant there was no popes, no archbishops, no ayatollahs. We have ayahs as nuns, but no ayatollahs. No, no sort of big bosses. Obviously that people have tried to create those hierarchies over the years, but they've got no real validity in the original teachings, which means that of all the religions, we're pretty, not totally, but pretty hierarchy-free, which does give us a lot of leeway to actually to answer questions just personally rather than follow a party line. Of course, that gives us a little bit of difficulty because we don't have official statements we can make on things like abortion, euthanasia, asylum seekers or anything else. There's no official position because there's no official to make that statement, which is, in a sense, is quite wonderful. It means that people can actually join in the conversation. But what Buddhism can do, and what I love teaching over here, is not teaching you what the Buddhist position is, not even telling you how to what to believe, but telling you how to find out and how to make these decisions, and how to increase your understanding of these issues which cause so much problems in our modern world. And this evening I was asked to talk a little bit about animal cruelty, talk about asylum seekers, talk about, I just come back from Sri Lanka, and while I was there was some Buddhists so seemingly just destroying Muslim temples and properties. It wasn't me, I never did that, not me. And so, can you please, Ajahn Brahm, talk about these things that are worrying us? And first of all, to say that just because I say it doesn't mean it's infallible truth. It's a great thing when you come and see a Buddhist monk, no matter how popular they happen to be, even if it's a Dalai Lama. Even the Dalai Lama sometimes makes mistakes. Isn't that refreshing? That they're not perfect, no more than you are. But instead of actually telling you what to believe, we always like giving you some examples of how to find out and how to solve these issues by yourselves. And especially earlier on, someone was talking about the asylum seekers, which is a huge thing here in Australia. And it can polarize many people and people's views. And this is not going to be about politics, because when you get into politics, you really start sort of turning people off. And especially someone actually showed me this, gave me some jokes about politics. They said, what the meaning of the word politics? You know where the word politics comes from? It comes from the word poly, meaning many, and ticks, which are blood-sucking parasites. Politics. That's really unfair, because I know many politicians are trying to do their very best. They're not all blood-sucking parasites. Some of them actually do some work. Not all of them, but some of them do. And they try their very, very best. But that was a joke for tonight, by the way. So those of you just hanging out for the joke, you can leave now. But instead of actually doing that, when it comes to things like asylum seekers, there's one thing I always remember. There was an incredibly moving poem which was written by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And he had a right to write a poem like this because, he was Vietnamese. And, he was in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He left, when the Vietnam fell. And of course, he was supporting and helping out many of the original boat people, who fled from Vietnam. And one of the nicest things about his poem was just how it moved you to see a totally different picture than the normal. And I cannot repeat his poem, but I'm sure you'll be able to find it on the internet if you look for it. Or it may be in some of the books in our library from Venerable Thich, which means Venerable Nhat Hanh. He's very old now, but he was a very great leader of Buddhism. And he said that he is a young woman jumping into the boat, so afraid, leaving everything she ever knew behind. She is a woman he is a woman, just being thrown around by these waves, not knowing if the boat would sink. She is a woman who gets in the boat boarded by Thai pirates and raped and taken all the money away. She said, I am the Thai man who rapes her and takes all her money. I am the person who rescues her, and I am the person who interrogates her. What he was saying in this poem, which I'm sorry I cannot do justice with, but he identifies with all people involved in a simple but tragic journey of a woman who is a refugee, who gets raped, beaten, things stolen, but still survives. What it was doing is expanding the awareness, not just to see one person, not just to see the asylum seeker in Manus Island, but to see the guard, to see the person who interrogates, the person who abuses, to see the radio talk show host who calls them illegals, to see every person and understand why we do that. Because sometimes it's easy to identify with one side and never see the other sides. We know our side. We know our side, but we don't know the side of the animal who gets slaughtered cruelly. We don't know the side of the person who buys that meat in the supermarket and eats it. We don't know all the sides. And there's a beautiful plea for people, not just to see your side, but to see the other side. I'm not just the Buddhist monk urging on the mob in Sri Lanka. I am also the Muslim shopkeeper whose business is destroyed. I am the Buddhist who is afraid that the Muslims may take over our country. Whatever it is, to see both sides of the conflict. I am the Islamic terrorist who feels they are doing the right thing for the cause. I am the person, the little child whose parents get killed because they're the wrong side of the conflict. I am the soldier who tries to help out but ends up just getting afraid and shooting the children. Seeing every side of what we call the human conflicts of our world, and not just taking one side. What that actually does, it just moves a person from just judging, which is one of the beautiful things which I learnt about Buddhism, never blaming anybody. It's a tough thing to do that, not blaming, especially when you see someone who's done a terrible act. It's so easy to come in and say just what they have done is unforgivable. But then, if you take the time, and if you try and understand what led that person to be in that situation at that time, that they killed, raped, even children, if you can do that, then you have taken an incredible step of wisdom. to see another side. It's a tough thing to do, and many people can't do that. They remain, if they don't make that step, in their anger, in their justified rage, in feeling that some people need to be thrown away, to be discarded, to be rejected 100% totally. Have you ever felt rejected by somebody? Told that you're not good enough, that you're bad, that you're hopeless, there's something terribly wrong with you? And what does it feel like? And do you deserve that? A person who's made a mistake, who done some terrible thing, rejected by putting in a prison, by putting in some cell or some dark hole because of the race, their religion, because whatever they're doing, seeking what they feel to be freedom. It's so hard to judge a person who does such things. And if you want to know why, just ask yourself how many times you've been badly judged and hurt. Has people really understood why you do, why you think what you think? One of the nice things about the way the Buddha taught, he taught us not to blame, but to understand. Not to judge, but to have this incredible compassion. And straight away people think, if you don't judge, if you just let these people do these terrible things, that life will get worse and worse and worse and worse. But life does get worse and worse and worse. When we judge, we put people in jail, we go to war, we try and stop this, we try and blame that person. It gets worse and worse and worse. And so sometimes that people keep saying, can't there be another way? And sometimes that I look at this teaching of the Buddha and I think maybe there is another way just of forgiveness and reconciliation. I often said that sometimes the blame game, and call it a game, because the people who win, the people who actually manage to blame others and avoid getting blamed themselves, because it is a two-way street, that the people who do blame others, and of course once is blame, once is guilt, is always what comes next, which is punishment. I often notice that whenever there's blame and guilt, we always want to punish someone, to hurt them, to take away their happiness, their freedom, something to make them suffer. They need to learn that what they've done is wrong. But look, whenever somebody gets punished, do you ever learn? Every time I got punished as a kid, the only thing I ever learned is to make sure I'm smart enough not to get caught next time. It just made me, more sneaky. It's just like when you have a cat in the forest. You put a bell on the cat, thinking that will protect it, protect the birds from being eaten. And all that teaches a cat is to move with greater stealth. You see these cats, and they can, these bells on their neck, and they can move without it sort of making even a small dingle. It just makes them even more clever in catching cats, which is one of the reasons when we had a cat at our monastery, people say, can you get a bell and put around its neck to stop it catching cats? I said, yeah, there's only one bell in this monastery we can put around our cat which will stop it catching birds, and that's this big 2-meter big bell in our bell house. Put that around the cat and that will stop it catching birds. But then we get done for animal cruelty. Putting a bell like that, twice as big as the cat. But that's what blame actually really does, or it just teaches people not to get caught. There must be some other way of dealing with these problems. Instead of demonizing the asylum seekers, demonizing even the people who torture. Is that going to stop the cruelty in our world and the pain which it inflicts on us? Surely there can be some other way. And sometimes there is that beautiful other way, which is this fellow Thich Nhat Hanh was trying to elaborate. Put yourselves in the position of the Islamic terrorist. Feel what it's like to be them. Get inside their head and understand that what makes them do what they do. Get inside the head I always say, you should walk, a mile in somebody else's shoes. Men, I tried this, walking a mile in a woman's shoes. I couldn't do it because their shoes are too small for me. And anyway, the high heels would kill me. The only time I walked in women's shoes in my mum's shoes when I was about 6 or 7 years of age. And after that time, I could not do that anymore. But sometimes to be able to feel what another person feels. And sometimes, that's what I sometimes have to do. There's a lot of Buddhists become psychologists, therapists, there's a few here. And sometimes they come to monks and nuns. I often sort of joke, one of the reasons why they come to monks and nuns for therapy, for counselling, rather than professionals, is because we're much cheaper. We undercut the market. But, a lot of times people ask, how can you actually do that? And what advice can you give as a Buddhist monk who meditates, to be able to help somebody else? And I always say, you have to feel their pain. You have to get inside their head, inside even their body, to feel the pain they're feeling. I'd say it's like, a person in trouble, in difficulty, they're in a hole, a very deep pit. And the only way you can even get close enough to them, to speak to them and understand what the hell they're saying, is you have to get into that pit with them. No matter how dark, no matter how deep and how black their pit is, you have to get in with them. But I always say that my trick is that when I get into this deep, dark, damp pit with people suffering, I always take a ladder with me. So not only can I get out, but I can take the other person out with me. One of those great ladders is the understanding that has forgiveness to it, which doesn't judge. Because a lot of times when people have been scarred, it's a judgment. There's something really bad with being scarred. There's something wrong with them. There's something deeply sort of mistake inside of them or inside of life. They have to kill, they have to rape, they have to do something to fix it up. Sometimes the anger, the rage inside human beings is enormous. And how can that be fixed up? Except by accepting the rage, instead of trying to blame it. Here we go again, it's one of the great stories of Buddhism. Of the Buddha, the greatest insights. Some of these stories I use again and again. I repeat them again and again because they deserve to be repeated again and again, so you can practice them again and again. It's the story of the monster in the emperor's palace. Quick, I'll just go over it quickly. Monster came into the emperor's palace, emperor was away, the monster was so frightening, went right into the middle of the palace and sat on the emperor's throne. Emperor said, "Get out of here, you don't..." No, so the emperor was away. The other soldiers, ministers said, "Get out of here, you don't belong." At those few words, the monster grew bigger, uglier, more of a problem. That really made him more upset. "Get out of here! Who do you think you are? You don't belong in here!" And I always tell people when I was in Sri Lanka, if ever you give a public talk, don't just say things in a very low tone and make things peaceful. Every now and again, shout at people, get some sort of story so you can raise your voice, because it wakes people up. So, get out of here, you don't belong. And at that, this monster kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when the king came back, the monster was huge, ugly, really a big problem. And what did the king do? "Welcome, monster. Thank you for coming. Why have you waited such a long time to come for a visit?" And with those few kind words, the monster grew an inch smaller, less ugly, less smelly, less offensive. And they went to get it a cup of tea. They gave it foot massage. They gave it some nice curry puffs, like you get in the Buddhist Society of West Australia, the best curry puffs in the world. And they were just such beautiful curry puffs that just every curry puff, that monster grew an inch smaller, less ugly, less smelly, less of a problem. Every act of kindness, the monster grew smaller. And they kept on being so kind that the monster soon vanished completely away. And in that story the Buddha said, this is what we call the anger-eating monsters. You give them anger, they don't get better, they get worse. Bigger, more of a problem, more of a difficulty. Give them kindness, and and it gets less of a problem. And there's so many these anger eating problems in our world. And this is the solution to many people who have been hurt and harmed. When you say to their bad, terrible experiences, when they say, you say to them, this is wrong, this is bad, what a terrible thing has happened to you. What actually you're doing is trying to get them to get rid of that monster. And it gets worse. Have you ever had any bad experiences in the past? And the more you try and get rid of them, the worse they become. That's why don't get negative towards your past, even if it's been painful. We have to say, welcome. Thank you for these experiences. It's a hard thing to say, but you try that, and the pain of the past gets less and less and less. It softens the past. The monster gets smaller when you accept it. You know, if we could only teach a little thing like that, then the idea of revenge, you cause me so much pain, and the only way that I can deal with that pain, making me lose my homeland, making me lose, my culture, making me lose my husband, my wife, even making me lose my friends. All of that pain. What happens when we say, get out of here, we don't belong? We treat it with ill will, we try to blame it, we blame the other people who caused the problem, we blame the society, we blame the government, we blame the shock jocks, we blame everybody. And all we ever do with that negativity is create more negativity, more violence, more anger, more revenge in our world. That never works. There's so many anger-eating monsters in our world. Can we not give them kindness? It's an amazing thing when we do this. Many people think this is impractical. It doesn't work. But what else has worked in our world? Blaming people, putting them in jail. What happens? We just get bigger prisons. More and more prisons, more and more people in jail. Is that really the future we want? I always thought with prisons, they should never be treated as places where we punish people. Maybe places where we protect people from themselves. Just like you have a disease and you need to be quarantined for a while so that disease doesn't harm other people. But never to treat prisoners as if they need to be taught a lesson. Punishment doesn't teach you a lesson. As I said, it teaches you not to get caught next time. Kindness teaches you a lesson. It's amazing when someone is kind to you. You tend to be kind to yourself. And a lot of the bad behavior of human beings is only because we don't know how to be kind to ourselves. When you're not kind to yourself, all this anger, this ill will, these terrible things, they just get worse and worse inside of us. It's amazing when anybody ever does receive some forgiveness, how it does change your life. When many people, they look for a partner in life, just someone who can love them as they are. In other words, forgive them for the things which, they know their faults. I know my faults. I tell terrible jokes. I know that. Sometimes I talk too much. I know that. But that's just what happens when you get old. It's true, I think I said that when you get old, your eyes go, you have to wear glasses, your ears, sometimes you can't hear what a person's saying. Your arms are a bit wobbly, they shake. Your legs are weak, you can't run like you used to. Everything in your body gets weak when you get old, except one thing, your mouth. It's true, you see these old grandmas and grandpas, they can really talk. They can talk for hours and hours and hours, that never wears out. That's why all the best speakers are old. Anyway, so I know my faults, but when you're kind and forgive your faults, then you don't tend to hurt other people. Have you ever seen just how that lack of self-respect causes the anger inside a human being? And that's taken out on other people. And that causes, the violence, the wars. So often, if you put a person inside a prison, whether that's an asylum seeker, whether that's a rapist, that's a murderer, that's a thief, it doesn't actually do them any good at all. It doesn't teach them a lesson. All it does is make them worse human beings. But if you teach a person respect, self-respect, kindness, just like you can teach yourself kindness and forgiveness and just basic compassion and love, what does that do to you? We always, we learn about others by looking at ourselves. As me, so you, as you, so me, and I don't care what race, religion you are. We all have the same engine inside, the same human heart. Just like I like to be respected and cared for and protected, every other human being, an animal as well, every being on this planet likes the same. To be looked after and protected. That's why you come to like a Buddhist monastery, the animals there are just so friendly. Sometimes they're too friendly. We get all these ticks from the kangaroos because they keep hanging around us all the time. We'd rather have that than just have the kangaroos run away. And we're just walking in the path like the other day. I'm walking up to my hut. Would that kangaroo move? No. I have to go through the wet grass, not the kangaroo. And the kangaroo, they like wet grass. They're brought up in it. I was brought up in London. I shouldn't... But anyway... The kangaroos think they own the monastery. Well, perhaps they did. They were there first. But it's nice when you have to do things like that. It means the kangaroos aren't afraid of you at all, which is wonderful. We can live in peace and harmony with people. Only when you have that sort of sense of respect to other people. And you're never afraid of people. Even when I lived in Thailand, there's all these dangerous animals like snakes. Are you afraid of snakes? I was never afraid of snakes because, only if they got in the way. Come on, get out of the way. And they wouldn't. I tell you that one time, I had lots of snake stories in Thailand because you were really kind and, you didn't sort of criticize any being, and they belong there. You had some great fun with snakes in Thailand. I was doing some chanting once, and as I was doing the chanting, the monk sitting next to me, on his back, I was watching him, and this little head appeared from his back, little snake's head. Because the snake had just crawled up his back when I was doing the chanting. The snake looked at me, I looked at the snake, then the snake looked at the monk, and the monk looked at the snake. And it's one of these things, I wish you had one of these smartphones in those days. You can make a video, it would be one of the greatest videos. The snake looking at the monk, just eyeballing each other. They both didn't know what to do. They weren't afraid of each other, just, who are you? Yeah, what are you doing here? And the monk just put his robe off, just so the snake could very gently go down without sort of scaring the snake, and the snake went away, that's all. The snake was just coming there for the holy chanting, just like many Buddhists do. This is Thailand, all the snakes are Buddhist in Thailand. And I can't resist the other story that one morning, I've been meditating all night. Because when you meditate all night, sometimes you're a little bit tired in the morning. And also remember, it was first thing in the morning where the light is not that strong. So I went out for, go to do a number one, urinate in the forest. And if you've ever been to Asia, you don't have these bowls where you sit on. You squat toilets. We always taught to squat when we're urinating. So there I was in the forest, urinating in the first light of day, relieving the pressure in my bladder. But, I really did think I was urinating on a stick until it started to move. It was absolutely true. I was peeing on a snake. Oh, I said that word again. I said that 2 weeks ago. I said I wouldn't say the P word again. But anyway, I was urinating on a snake, in a forest. And these were a very venomous snake. I recognised what the snake was. Very venomous, a very dangerous snake. And I said this story in Sri Lanka. The most sensitive part of a male body was about that far from the snake's mouth. Now, you girls won't appreciate this. You men, it's no, ooh. They're only a few inches away, from my you-know-what. And would that snake bite me? No way. Because again, it was a Buddhist snake. It thought, I could read its mind, it thought it was being blessed with holy water. You can't get more holy than straight from a monk. So that's the time I blessed the snake with my own urine. And it loved it, every minute of it. Maybe because it was all so warm and snakes are pretty cold. Now that is what happens. Dangerous snakes. Imagine you could have the same sort of attitude when you saw a member of the Taliban coming with their AK-47s. Not at all afraid, but have this beautiful sense of respect and kindness. Could that person be violent to you? I would say no. They would be unable to be violent. Because violence to another person does need to say that you are my enemy, you are harming, you are hurting me. If you actually give violence back, it actually makes their violence even worse, which makes my violence worse, which makes their anger worse, which makes my revenge worse. And we get into this terrible, terrible cycle of blaming, anger, and trying to make amends for the terrible things you did, because I've got to get it back to you. The cycle of revenge and anger in our world is just too great. I don't know why people, actually probably I do know, so I know some people come to this country in boats or an aircraft, the migrants seeking asylum. Some come for very legitimate reasons, some for economic reasons, I don't know. But can we really judge? This is one of the biggest problems. And can we, even if they do come for the wrong reasons, can we punish them? Should we be harsh to any human being? Maybe do have to quarantine them. I'm not quite sure, but at least, the very least, we should always be humane to our fellow human beings. Because that's what Thich Nhat Hanh taught me in that poem. You could be that asylum seeker. You could also be that guard. You could also be that person slaughtering the cow. That may be your job, your profession. Whatever your role in life is, we can always be compassionate and kind. And just that makes this whole world a totally different ball game. We do have snakes, we do have monks, sharing sort of the forest, sometimes making mistakes and urinating on them. But we don't have to bite. We don't have to be cruel. We can always just be kind to one another, share our stories, share our time together. And that is something we can always do. So as a Buddhist, just the politics of asylum seekers, the politics of vegetarianism, the politics of sustainability, the politics of interracial, interreligious communities, that is really beyond me. Because I've got a limit to my wisdom and understanding, but certainly the compassion is never beyond me. And that compassion, I know, is an incredibly powerful force in our world. So I cannot maybe teach what is right and wrong with all these incredibly complex international geopolitical problems of our world. But as a Buddhist, you can always encourage people, no matter what faith they are, even no faith at all. Surely you can always be a little bit kinder, a little bit more selfless, not looking at your own needs and requirements, and certainly not being worried so much. Because a lot of time people justify, if we let one person go, terrible things will happen in the world. If we don't lock people up when they sort of assault our kids, if we don't have a register for sex offenders, it will get worse and worse and worse and worse. There's so much of the terrible things I see happening in our society are coming from fear. And because that's what one of the nuns asked me, can you talk about trust? What you fear, usually you make happen. If you trust, what you trust is usually comes to be. If you trust another person, like I trusted that snake, and the snake trusted me, we never hurt one another. The kangaroo trusts me, and I'm not going to kick it when it stands in my path. Can you have that trust instead? Having a world built on trust rather than fear actually starts to end the cycle of violence and abuse and cruelty in our world. And we trust one another. We trust one another that you make a mistake. You're going to learn from it. I trust you to learn from it and not do it again, so I forgive you. In my life as a monk, I've seen this so many times, and it's beautiful when it happens. Husband cheats his wife, has an affair, sleeps with somebody else. She says, I can't trust him anymore. I say, that's not good enough. I say, trust him. Again. And husband, you live up to that trust. And it's an incredible thing when I've seen that occur. The wife says, I forgive you, even though he's done a very, very bad thing. And he lives up to that trust. She gives him that trust. And it's such a valuable thing. I don't deserve to be trusted. I've cheated on you. I've hurt you. The guy knows that. Or if it's the other way around, the girl knows that. I don't deserve trust, but someone gives it to you. And that's such a powerful event. You get given trust which you don't deserve. And you value that so much that you will never hurt that person again. There's no way you can do that to a person who trusts you so much. Have you ever known, maybe you've had a beautiful mother or father, they trusted you so much. And sometimes you did hurt them. And that just hurt you much more than it hurt them. They trusted you. And you just let them down. And what did they do? They say, I can still trust you again. You're my son, my daughter. I'll still trust you again. And isn't that such a beautiful thing in the life? To trust people who were untrustworthy? Not worthy of trust, but I'm going to give it anyway. That is something so beautiful. When you see it happen, it gives you hope in this world. And you can do that to yourself. You made mistakes, but trust yourself. You won't do it again. Trust yourself and trust others. You may get hurt again, but you get hurt many more times when you don't trust, when you fear. So I don't like having a world which is based on fear. Lock them up, they might offend again. How about trusting them, that they won't offend? 9 out of 10 people will not offend again if you give them that trust. Give them fear, and they will. All of them, or most of them anyway. So it's again with the mistrust which we have between religions, races, animals and humans, which gives rise to the because we don't trust each other, we have to dominate them, we have hierarchies, we have bullies, we have violence, all coming from fear of someone else and the lack of trust. We have Palestine and Israel. What's the problem? Can't we trust one another and take down the walls and the boundaries and the fences? Aren't the fences and walls just a sign of fear? Are they keeping people out? Or are they imprisoning themselves? Sometimes you wonder that. Whenever I've gone to a zoo, I see the bars. Am I on the inside or am I on the outside of those bars? So I was staying in a house in Sri Lanka, a rich person's house, because they try and look after me when I'm in Sri Lanka and try to make sure I'm not bothered by all these people who want to come and see me. So they put me in a house, there was bars on the windows. And I joked, you put me in prison. What did I do to be inside this prison? It was a nice prison, a nice house, but it still had bars on the windows. Was that to keep me from going out or keep thieves from coming in? I didn't really know. Have you got bars on the windows of your house? Security screens, they're called. But are they to keep you in or keep other people out? Sometimes you don't really know. But certainly it's fear and not trust. Wouldn't it be lovely? I know that in the early years of Perth, no one they left the doors open. When I grew up, we always left our door open of our house. The reason was we were so poor. My father would say he hoped one day a burglar might come in and leave us something. We were poor. But can you see that whole idea in our life? Because of fear, we have violence and anger. If we can have trust, Do you trust your partner? Or do you always wonder, where is she going tonight? She says she's going to this Buddhist society. She keeps on talking about this Ajahn Brahm guy. Is that my wife's lover? You can always have this mistrust sometimes. So, what type of world would you like to live in? A world of fear or a world of trust? Because when we have fear, that is when we lock the asylum seekers away. We're afraid of them. Afraid they're going to come and swamp Australia, going to take our jobs, marry our children. They're going to have these diseases. They're going to take in their culture. Australia is going to become an Islamic republic. We're going to have Sharia law. We're going to have all these terrible things happen. Ah! Come on. So sometimes it's the fear which makes us do these terrible, terrible things. Cannot we trust the goodness of the people of Australia? The kindness? Can we trust that instead? And say, look, because I know that some of the Vietnamese, Cambodians, the people who came in boats years ago, this is my opinion, okay? This is not official Buddhist view. This is not dogma. I am not infallible. I make mistakes. But sometimes I've seen just anybody who has basically had the guts, the courage, the initiative to get on that boat and leave Vietnam or Cambodia in those days and come here. These aren't going to be lazy people. They're going to work their butt off when they come here, and many of them have. There's many Vietnamese refugees who've made a great life in Australia here this evening, or listening overseas, Cambodians as well. It's almost like a filter filtering out those with initiative, with the get up and go. They do get up and go from the oppression of their country. They usually make an incredibly good life if they're given even a small chance. Come with absolutely nothing. And many of them have been to their houses, seen their families, incredibly successful, amazing people. Don't people deserve a chance? But that's only my opinion. Maybe I'm not sort of fearful enough about more people coming in. But at least I think, at the very least, we should always be compassionate and kind. I can never see that anyone losing out on kindness. So that's sort of my particular view on that. But certainly no fear, more trust in our world. No blame for why people do these things, even if they do it for reasons which aren't real refugees. Even if they, just kill animals really cruelly. I don't know why they do that, but can we not be kinder in our world, kinder to our kids, kinder to ourselves, kinder to our partners? They do something wrong, please forgive them. It hurts, you've done something wrong, I've done things wrong many, many times. Can't we just trust and give this amazing sense that, yes, you have done something wrong, but I'll give you another chance. Yes, you have sort of abused the system, but I will give you another chance. Because that's what I've been given a few times. And I've been so thankful that someone has trusted me. I made a terrible mistake, but they've trusted me, they've forgiven me. And I think, wow, thank you so much. It means I won't do it again. It's something beautiful in this world. That forgiveness, that trust, that compassion, that openness of heart. And that openness of heart gives us a society which we can be proud of, and a future full of hope rather than full of fear. What's the other way? Control, fear, violence, abuse. Is that the sort of world we want to give to our kids? People might say, Ajahn Brahm, you're so idealistic, you don't live in the real world. I do live in the real world, I travel so much. And you do come across sort of some of the worst cases. To this day, I can never forget, I was about 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, going to the Port Hedland detention centre to see some of the Cambodian refugees who came here. And having a talk for 5-10 minutes with this young boy, maybe about 22, 23, who'd been in the Port Hedland detention centre for about 3-4 years. His English was not much, but I remember him telling me, sitting opposite this wooden little table on benches, it's like a barbecue area, and just saying, he said, "My soul is dark, I have no hope." And that went straight inside of me. I will never forget that. Not quite sure what happened to that young man, but his soul was dark, lack of hope. Has been putting in that centre for 3-4 years with no future. I would not want that on myself or on anybody I knew or cared for. And as a Buddhist monk, you're asked to care for everybody. Don't let people's souls become dark. If they are sent back, you're making terrorists, people with violence. People have been taught that there is no kindness in this world, there is no forgiveness, there is no softness, there's only harshness. Is that the sort of world which we want? Is that the way we want to treat ourselves? I don't think so. So please treat others with some kindness and care. The way this works out, I'm not sure. The way that we deal with asylum seekers, with animals, with people who commit these crimes in our community, who kill people, who steal, get on drugs, sell drugs or whatever. This is such a big problem, but please, we can always be that little bit more kind. We can always be a little bit more trusting, whether that's people you don't know or whether that's a person sitting next to you. But then most importantly of all, yourself. As you would treat yourself, treat the others with kindness, with softness, and with trust. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Not everyone will agree with me, but that's please forgive me if it's not practical, but I want to make a better world wherever I can. Okay, some questions. I'm sure I may have stirred a few people up. The first question first from Alan Jones in Sydney. No, it's not. Be good if it was. Alan Jones, shock jock. No. No, okay, this is a great question here from the Netherlands. Should we Buddhists strictly maintain the principle of non-violence and allow innocent people to get killed? Number one, innocent people. Hands up here if you are innocent. You've all done something which is wrong or bad or selfish or something in this life. So sometimes when they say innocent people, sometimes we can't see the big picture. I always remember just going to Karna Prison Farm years and years and years ago and being taught the law of karma, the Buddhist teaching of karma from this old prisoner. And he taught me. I'm supposed to be a Buddhist and understand these things, but it's amazing. You learn more Buddhism, just from people who are not even Buddhists than you do from your own teachers. So he came up to me one day after my class and said, "I need to talk to you, this is really important. I've been put in prison for a crime I never did." And he told me, he said, "Look, I know many prisoners will say that, but I'm being honest. I don't know how I can convince you I'm honest about this. I respect you. I've been watching you for a long time. I respect you as a Buddhist monk. This is absolutely true. Cross my heart, I never did that theft. I've been put in jail for something I never did." Now, of course, when you hear that, maybe most of you think this is unjust, it's unfair, you can't let something like this stand. I have a very strong sort of sense of justice and what's fair. And it's not just a sense of justice. If I think something's not fair, I'm going to do something about it. Speak up, say something. I get into trouble for that many times, but I don't care. I'm going to stand up for the gays, stand up for women, stand up for whoever. Stand up for the Muslims. I don't care. I'm going to stand up for whoever I think is being mistreated. Even the Buddhists, we're mistreated sometimes too, especially monks and nuns. So I thought, I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to go back. I started thinking, who can I phone as soon as I get out of that prison? I know a few lawyers. I'm going to get on your case. I'm going to get you free. And when I was thinking that, he interrupted my thoughts, and he had this really cheeky smile, and he said, but Ajahn Brahm, there are so many other robberies where I was not caught. I guess this is fair. So he's put in jail for a robbery he didn't do, but many robberies he did do, he wasn't caught. Really cheeky, but so I laughed and said, thank you, that's a great story, which I shared many, many times. So whenever you get done for speeding, do you think it's really unfair? How many times were you not caught? Do you ever think that's unfair, that you were speeding and the camera wasn't there? Was that unfair? Of course not. So sometimes innocent. How innocent are we? And sometimes we look at that, there's many things which I have done. Sometimes, if you are in the war zones, were you really innocent? Did you vote for governments? Did you just turn a blind eye when other sort of bad things were happening? Did you support your friend when they were being taken away? How innocent are people? That's the first thing. But when actually people are being killed, non-violence, what does that mean? Non-violence doesn't mean running away. Sometimes non-violence means standing in front of the person with a gun, taking the bullet yourself. I always remember one of the great sayings of Gandhi. One of the reasons why he was a great person, because he died with a bullet. But he said, I can see 1,000 reasons for giving my life to a cause, but I can't see one reason for taking the life of another. I always remember that. 1,000 reasons for giving your life, but never a reason for taking a life. And one of the nice things about being a Buddhist, I don't mind giving a life because I've got many more left. You're not losing out. You can get another rebirth afterwards in just one life, and maybe you get a better body. You may be getting old now, so giving your life would be a really good thing. Just maybe you can get a nicer body next time. You're getting a bit old, you're escaping the old people's homes, which is a nice thing. You don't get dementia when you die young. So innocent, you don't need to be violent to stop people being killed, which is the interesting point. When we have violence, does it stop people being killed or more people being killed? So, do we have to maintain the principle of violence so innocent people doesn't get killed? That's what this question is begging. The question was, should we as Buddhists strictly maintain the principle of non-violence and allow innocent people to be killed? I asked, should we maintain the principle of violence to stop innocent people being killed? Does violence help? Short term, yes. But long term, what are we creating in our world? That violence works. So, the only way is to kill people, to put people in jail, torture them, execute them, to stop violence. We have a violent society sometimes. Fortunately, we're taking that away. You can't beat kids these days. You can't beat your wife. Is that a good thing? You bet it is, but in some situations you still can. In some countries, that's terrible. So if we have violence, and we're thinking violence is a solution, then we can extend that to, state-sponsored violence. violence against some people who need to be taught a lesson. And there's many ways of violence. It's not just with a stick or a gun or a whip or something. It's violence to people by shutting them up inside these dark holes with no hope. The emotional violence is as bad, if not worse, than physical violence. So, are we a non-violent society? Or do we inflict emotional violence, even here in Australia, on many people? Is that a solution? Or is that causing the problem? So I think in the long term, we have to look at other solutions to these problems. And maybe non-violence is that solution. But it's not just non-violence. It's something much more than that. It's not what we don't do. It's what we do in a place of violence. In other words, some kindness, some wisdom, some hard work, some sacrifice, lessening our desires, sharing more, having less of a sense of self and more a sense of we. We always say we're a selfish society. It's all about me. You vote for a politician. Why? What's in it for me? Isn't that so? There's something nasty about that. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we voted for a politician or voted for a party, not about what's in it for me, but what's in it for us, as a country, as a world? Not just what's in it for the Buddhists, but what's in it for the Muslims and the Christians and the atheists and for everybody. Not just the pensioners, but for the kids as well. Why is it that we're just so concerned about just me and mine and just my group rather than the big us? That's one of the things I've often taught to you. In life, it's never about me, it's never about you, it's always about us. In a relationship, in a Buddhist society, in any community in the world, it's never about you. You're not an island, you can't be by yourself, you're affected by other people. I can go in my cave in Serpentine, but I have to come out and face people afterwards. It's all about us. So that's about life. So maybe that's how we can stop people being killed. Not by inflicting violence, by changing attitudes and perceptions. Education, teaching. Many people have said that. I think I remember hearing that, was it even Julia Gillard was on some sort of program or something. She said, education is the key to non-violence. Interesting concept. And I think there's much she's saying there which is true. And it's not just educating people's brains, educating people's hearts as well. That is a way to stop people getting killed. Interesting. Anyway, again, I haven't told you what to believe. Maybe change some of the way you think. Open up new doors. That's what we do here. Not just the same old, same old, same old. Something new to think about, to contemplate. Maybe different ways to make this world a better place. Any questions from the audience here? Yeah. Where are they? Yeah.
On the subject of non-violence, I was just wondering, there's the obvious violence that we see firsthand, but there's some violence that exists that people are very detached from in modern society, such as the meat industry, and I wondered if it was the right thing to do for us to not to fund other people being violent, because the ones that are doing it purely for the profit that comes from our pockets.
Yes. The best thing to do is, because sometimes that we can become angry at people who are being cruel to others, and then we become part of the problem. So this is one of the things I mentioned with Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, to be able to identify with the person who slaughters a cow, to be in their shoes as well as be in the body of a cow being slaughtered, to be both. Which means that we try and lessen the pain, but not eliminate it. to lessen the violence, to lessen the hurt. And that is a goal we can actually achieve. Because too often that people, what I've seen in my life is their goals are just so high, so much, asking from the world what it can never ever give you. But we can ask for better, for more humane ways. We can never stop asylum seekers. We can treat them more humanely. We can never stop, please excuse me, never stop men cheating on their wives. It's going to happen. But we can actually try and treat it a bit more humanely, treat our wives more humanely. We're going to get angry at each other, but at least we can treat ourselves more humanely with some forgiveness and violence. So sometimes it's like seeing what this world is and how much it can give and not asking for what it can never get you. And if we actually can live within the parameters of what's possible, we make the world a better place, but not a perfect place. That's another part of Buddhism which was hard for me to accept, but it's because of the imperfections of life. That's, the old shit story. That's what makes us grow. It's hard to accept sometimes, the cancers. Can't we cure the cancers? Can't we cure the diseases? Can't we cure the tragedies and natural disasters? No, we can't. We have to accept, embrace, and learn. Lessen them. Lessen the cruelty, lessen the violence. Eat less meat. Those of you who can, be vegetarians. At the very least, be humane as much as you can humanely kill another person. But at least we can do better. Let's do better first, before we try to be perfect. You may not agree with me, but sometimes that's how I've come to judge the world after all the years I've been a monk. I never expect each one of you to be perfect. You do some stupid things sometimes, but I'd always love you nevertheless and be your friends. Anyway, thanks for that. It's a very difficult talk, but thanks again for listening, everybody. And hopefully it just raises people up a little bit, and raises animals up, protects all types of society, whether it's even those people who come here by boats or by plane or whatever, people who are suffering in our world. Anyway, let's just pay respects to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha now.